Game design has evolved immensely in the last 20 years or so. To me, it actually has evolved more than in the previous history of our species, which I know is a bold statement, but I think I can defend it. And yet, for all of these innovations, sometimes you still see a game that does things in a way that you hadn't seen before, or at least that I hadn't seen before. And one such game is Solenia. It is a pickup and delivery game, I think, again, because it's just so unusual in its mechanics that I'm not entirely sure. It looks like a set collection and pickup and delivery game. It's 1 to 4 players, so we also have the solitaire variant. In this game, we are in a crazy sci-fi world in which part of the world is in the dark, it's night there, and on the opposite side of the world is day. Crazy idea. Who could ever imagine such a planet? So, crazy planet, we're picking up stuff on one side of the planet and we're selling it on the other side, and we're trying to make more profit and collect more victory points than our opponents. Let's see how Solenia works. Taking a look at some of the components, the board is made of 5 of these very strange looking double-sided cardboard elements, which you organize in a night area, dawn, and day area at the beginning of the game. We have resources that you will pick up and sell to the people of Solenia, and these are water, stone, wheat, and wood. We have tiles there that represent the orders that you're trying to fulfill. Basically, when you have the kind of resources that those people want, you go to a city, you deliver, that is, you discard resources to match whatever is required here, say 3 wheat and 2 wood, and then you score the corresponding number of points. And we have here, they want 2 waters for 2 victory points, and you have 4 tiles for orders that you can fulfill in a night city, and tiles for cities for orders that you can fulfill in a day city. And as soon as you fulfill one of those orders, you replace it with a tile from the deck. Now, what else do we have here? We have a player's board. As players fulfill orders, they will place them next to their board, starting from left to right. The completed night orders go under here, and the completed day orders go above here. This is important because at the end of the game, you will score extra points for each pair of night and day orders that you fulfill. So this one will be some extra points. If you have 2 of them, more extra points, and so on and so forth. This board also has a number of slots, 8, that tells, and that is the number of goods, of resources that you can bring with you. Moreover, when you complete an order, you gain the corresponding benefits. So, for example, when I complete an order and I put it in this slot, I gain a stone that I place on one of my spaces if I have enough room. Otherwise, I have to discard extra resources because I cannot have more than 8. Speaking of unusual looking components, each player has a deck of 16 cards, which you can balance on your finger like this. This is not part of the game, but is pretty much irresistible to do. As actually for how these cards work, you have to imagine each is divided in 2 halves. The part on top simply has number between 0 and 2, and this applies when you place the card on the board. We'll talk about that. And then you have a bottom half with different kinds of benefits that you can ignore for the time being. You can ignore it when you're playing the card. During your turn, pretty much the core of the game, the idea is that during your turn, you will take a card from your hand, you will place it on the board, and then you will replenish your hand. To play a card on the board, you have to put it in a space that doesn't have a card yet. It can be under the airship, in case there isn't a card there yet, or it can be adjacent to the airship, or it can be adjacent to one of your cards that you placed previously. Now, Several of these spots on the board represent cities that will produce goods. If you place a card on a city that shows a good, say here we have water, stone, or wood, then you gain the corresponding number of that good. Basically, you gain as many of the good as it says on the card. That one will give me 2 woods, hooray, 2 stones that I place on my personal airship. This one will give me 1 water, easy peasy. And that's pretty much it for when you place a card on a city that produces resources. If you place a card on a city that on a space that has a city, and you recognize those because they don't have resources, they have stars, then you can sell your goods. Actually, if you place a card on a city, you must sell goods, in which case you simply take goods from your personal area, and again, you trade them with one of those tiles, replenish the tiles, etc., etc. So this is how it works. Now, during the game, it may be that there will be cards here in the last row, in the last section. When you place a card with a 0, here there is a twist. Place a card with a 0 on a resource space, too bad you don't get anything. But you place a card on the board, resolve your turn as normal. For example, if you place a 0 in a city, you still get to sell your stuff. Then here is what happens at the end of a turn when you play a card. Actually, at the beginning of the turn. So you play the card, move the airship, resolve your turn, then something else happens. Then you take the last tile here, you remove the cards that are on it, you flip it to the other side, and you move it, so pretty much changing the field. So this will keep happening. Night becomes day and day becomes night. The cards that were on that strip that you just removed, now this is when they are activated. Now this is when they actually give you their payoff. For example, this one gives you the number that you see here of the resource that you see here. So this will give me 2 wheats. Basically, the bottom part with the benefit is activated when the strip that they are on is the last one and it is removed. This one gives you simply the resource that you see in the bonus area to be 1 stone regardless of what you see here. This one gives you a victory point if the card has been placed on a stone area. As you can see, it was. And there are similar cards for other types of resources. Say, if this one was placed in a water area, then that's when you get that benefit. And it's pretty much this the idea. Some cards will simply give you the resource regardless of what they're on. And again, some will give you the number that you see there of whatever resource is there. If you played a card with a number on a city, then you scored the number of victory points. And pretty much this is how it works. So you will collect victory points during the game thanks to the bonuses that you see at the bottom of the cards, thanks to the tiles that you collect. They have different numbers of victory points. Each player has 16 cards in their deck, and the game continues, very simple, until every player has played all of their cards. At that point, you score extra points that you have for completed pairs of resources on your board, up to 4 pairs, and at that point, the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. This game has been a surprise. I was curious about the game because of the look, and as we started playing it almost right away, things started clicking. Things almost exploded from the point of view of our interest. We're like, okay, I'm gonna play a card and see what happens. And all of a sudden, a range of options really blossomed around this simple idea, because in a game that is so simple, put down a darn card and resolve it, there are just so many decisions that you have to make. And they're all in an engine that anybody can learn, and yet then it feeds your brain with all sorts of interesting problems and decisions without at the same time turning into a brain burner. Now, you put down a card, so you have to choose which card you want to play. So far so good. But there are already decisions to be made there. What is so important is, of course, what you're trying to get, what you decide to get, and when. It seems great to play cards towards the end of the board, so that will be soon moved and you'll get to activate those bonus effects, but this way you may collect good stuff, you may collect resources, you may find yourself with a full ship and unable to sell it because other players have moved in the opposite direction and have placed their cards on the available cities. At that point, actually, you may find yourself forced to, well, it may take you a while before you can actually create a new path from the airship to a city where you can sell that stuff. So collect too much, you won't be able to get too many cities, or not in an efficient way. If you're wasting a couple of turns, you have 16. It can be pretty tragic. But of course, the opposite is also true. If you go towards the cities and you don't have anything to sell there, then what's the darn point? Oh wait, the darn point could be to prevent an opponent from getting to those cities. There is, I wouldn't say go, but there definitely is an area control element in which you can drive your paths of cards across the board, try to prevent players from getting some. You cannot occupy a city for the sake of it, but you can still make it impossible for a player to get there. But it's not a no-brainer, because you're still investing cards, you're still spending turns, so you are trying most likely to figure out a way of pursuing your interests, getting the good stuff, selling it somewhere else, and if in the process you can also be a total jerk to someone else and seal them off interesting areas, that's all the best. Those tokens that you get by delivering goods, they are not all born equal. Some have just a bunch of points, some go all the way to 9 points. And then it's easy to look around the table. Oh, look at that. The Fritz only is 1 wheat away from scoring that amazing thing. I may not need wheat right away, but I know that I don't want him to have it. What I'm trying to say is that around such a simple idea, there are so many decisions that need to be made and so much interaction. Really friendly. Don't be fooled by the cute look, the almost zen look that you have, the fantasy look. This is a game in which, to be effective, you will actively try to block other people as you are collecting your things. It's a game that feels so tight, it moves fast, it moves smoothly, because you have all these interesting decisions, but they're not going to overwhelm you because you have 3 cards and there's only a number of spaces where you can play them, but still you're planning short-term and long-term. I like the fact that people, they give you resources in one area of the board, they want the resources there on the other of the board, hence you really have the pickup and delivery. You have to try to figure out where the airship will be when the game goes back to you, because it may be that before it goes back to you, a lot of people play 0 cards, so the board moves a lot. I have to tell you, we had a blast. I played recently a game that also is simple, mechanically unusual, but a real challenge to play from the point of view of the strategy, the Terrifying Girl Disorder. This one is along those lines for originality, but it doesn't get to feel like only the most hardcore players could play it. You can play, I believe, with almost anybody. Anybody can understand the rules, and yet it sort of scales well to different levels of difficulty because different players will see different levels of play. It also changes depending on the number of players, because, of course, the board will move faster and will change more if you have a higher number of players, which presents you with different challenges, but it still works equally well. You're not going to have downtime problems or stuff like that. The more players you have, more interaction, more backstabbing is going to happen. That is for sure. With 2 players, you don't have so many options of blocking other players. It's a little less confrontational. I have to tell you, I've been immensely impressed by Solenia, and so have been people in my group. Players have vowed that as soon as the game night was over, they would run and order a copy. Everybody was impressed. It's not just another good game. It is several notches above the average of good games that we have these days. And you know, there's a lot of competition, so that is quite an endorsement, at least from me, at least from my group. Solenia has been an absolute joy to play, and we can't wait to play it again.